Welcome everyone to the Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is being held electronically, but we intend to conduct it similarly to an in-person meeting. Public comment will be via telephone or Zoom only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or join via the Zoom link. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 19. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So before we call roll, I'd like to welcome and introduce our newest Transportation Commissioner, Lisa Campbell. Lisa, we very loosely follow Robert's Rules of Order, as you know, but we tend to be very informal and feel free to address each other by our first names. If you'd like, feel free to introduce yourself, say a few words. The floor is yours, if you so desire.
Sure. Thanks so much, Brett. My name is Lisa Campbell. I live on the west side of Ann Arbor in Ward 5. I've lived in Ann Arbor for over 11 years, and I'm an employee of the University of Michigan, though I'm here in a personal capacity. And really excited to be joining Transportation Commission as a past graduate of the Ann Arbor Community Academy program. And where my absolute favorite segment was the one that had to do with transportation and the tour of the Wheeler Center in particular. So transportation is near and dear to my heart. Yeah, so thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to being a member of this body.
Thank you so much for being here. And also on the opposite end of the spectrum, I believe this is Molly's last meeting. Am I correct in that? Yep.
Yeah.
You may remember Molly. She's been on a lot longer than I have, at least a year longer. Molly served extremely well and dutifully as our chair, and really has been a primary driving force, not just of this commission, but of everything the commission has accomplished for years now. And not just the commission, but I think the city owes her a large debt of gratitude for all the work she's put in at these meetings and outside of the meetings, especially. A lot of people don't know how much advocacy she's involved in, but she's has big responsibilities on the AADL board. So Molly, if you want to say anything, feel free. If not, we can just move on. But
Thank you. I wrote something, but I can save it to the commissioner comments at the end. Let's try and get through as much as we can, and then
all right. Wasn't sure if you're going to hang on. Okay, good. All right.
I'm gonna. The kids will go to bed when they go to bed.
All right. Well, let's call roll, Chris.
Okay, I will now call roll. I've received regrets from Commissioner Leanne Margolis, who will not be able to attend. Please say here and from where you're dialing when your name is called. Commissioner Bolin. Okay. Commissioner Briggs. Commissioner Briggs.
Sorry, here in Ann Arbor.
Okay. Commissioner Brogan.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Campbell. Commissioner Campbell.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Altumaki.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hook.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Keeler.
Here from Ann Arbor, Ward 5 as well.
Commissioner Clayman.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here from Superior Township.
Commissioner Ramaswamy. Okay. Commissioner Hess.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Lieutenant Mike Sherbo.
Hey everybody, here today from San Diego, California.
Okay, and with that we have quorum.
Thank you. There are two items on the consent agenda, approval of the agenda and approval of the minutes. Are there any modifications to the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Moved
I'll
by
move to approve.
Wanu, seconded by Larry. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. The consent agenda is approved. Now we move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Oh, Wanu?
Oh, just real quick. I didn't get called on for roll. I don't know if you guys said that I was not going to be here, but I am here. So here from Ann Arbor. So thanks.
Noted.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
That's my fault. My fault, Wamu. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure if Planning Commission had a conflict tonight and if you were in that direction.
Gotcha. We're on Thursday. So yep.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem. I made a note of that. Thank you.
Public comment, opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 934-6385-2907 or connect via Zoom as described on the agenda. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number or the person's Zoom ID. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone or select the raise hand button in Zoom. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Raymond, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak during public comments?
We have a couple attendees, but I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment. Give folks a moment to see if they wish to raise their hand. All right.
All right, nevertheless, thanks to all the members of the public for coming to this meeting or viewing. I'd like to draw attention to those who sent emails. There are 4 emails, including attachments in the packet. So take a look at those if you haven't already. On to business. The first item is the Bird Road traffic calming. Petition process for Bird Road traffic calming between Newport and Huron River Drive is complete and is before us today for a recommendation. And so Raymond, if you could review the project.
Sure thing. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on a couple of things. Let's see, is it sharing the Bird Road PDF? It looks like it's sharing my notes.
No, it's sharing the PDF.
Okay, good. Yeah, my computer's trying to trip me up today, guaranteed. So we received a petition for traffic calming on Bird between Newport and Huron River Drive, as Brett indicated. After a series of meetings with the neighborhood, the final concept proposes 5 speed humps. This concept was supported by 63% of the respondents to the final poll, which means it advances to the Transportation Commission for your recommendation before heading to City Council. Just as a reminder, these are still part of the backlog that we're considering as part of the quote unquote old programs, which is why we're bringing them to you in City Council for final approval. And the estimated cost for these 5 speed humps is $87,500, which we expect to be supported by the fiscal year 25 traffic calming budget. But there's a little bit of an asterisk there that budget is not yet approved. So we'll just wait and see what City Council does with that budget. But if it's what staff is proposing, I think it will more than cover this. Let me also sharing on the screen, I have kind of an aerial view of Bird Road with the 5 devices. You'll see that the speed humps are spaced, and sorry, it's kind of hard to read. The speed humps are spaced, anywhere between 350 feet and 450 feet. And then while I'm on this topic, I wanted to, let's see, there was a question about which parcels were included in the final polling. These are the 15 parcels. Now there is, some of these are township islands, as I think Pete Hauk has identified, but our the road is the city's. And so as a result, the traffic calming and the application of the traffic calming rests squarely on the city. So we considered all of the houses along the corridor as part of that petition process. And then also to follow up on a question about the qualifying criteria. If you're not familiar with the program, we assess petitions based on several criteria, but there was a question about the speed. And so that you'll see the 85th percentile was almost 32 miles per hour on this segment of Bird. So it qualified, you only need 10 points to qualify. It qualified on that metric alone, let alone, other aspects of the petition. So that is Bird, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions at all? Peter, yes.
So when was the speed survey done?
It says collection dates were between September 23rd, 2022 and October 7th, 2022.
Okay, and then follow up to that, I went and checked out Bird Road before the meeting, and there are 2 speed limit signs on Bird Road, but it looks like they were installed in December of 2023, if I'm reading the sticker on them correctly. So the reason why I was interested in that is that especially when the leaves are out, it's not obvious to me that Bird Road is a residential city street. Especially the part that's near Huron River Drive looks more like a dirt county road where the speed limit is much higher than 25. So now that we've informed the drivers that the speed limit is 25, should we expect that speed study to have different results if we were to do it again today?
Well, it's always hard to forecast that. My experience has been signs are very passive, and while they may lead to some short-term compliance over time, those negative behaviors tend not to be heavily influenced by signage and signage alone. This has been our experience in other places. So while it may have had a short-term impact, I suspect in the long term, signage alone would not have had an impact.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can understand that, but this is, to me, this is kind of an extreme case, though. Like, it's a residential property, but it looks like a dirt county or residential street, but it looks like a dirt county road to me. And honestly, before I looked closely at Bird Road, that's what I thought this was. Like, I guess I didn't even really know that it was within the city limits until I started paying attention for this. The reason why I looked at it so closely, though, is because when we look at the cost of this project compared to the number of residences on Bird Road, especially when you consider the number of city residences on Bird Road, the cost is much higher per residence than either of the other projects that we're going to look at tonight. And it's much higher than the projects that we've had, the traffic calming projects that we've had in recent memory. So like even the Granger project that cost $200,000, like on a per residence basis, was far less expensive than this one tonight. And that's why I was really looking closely at it. And I guess in general, my feeling is that I want to get as much traffic calming out to residences as quickly as possible, and spending almost $90,000 on just 9 city residences doesn't seem like the right thing to do to me in order to reach that end of getting lots of traffic calming projects out to lots of people. So I think I'm generally not in favor of this first project.
All right, any other comments or questions? Erica, yeah.
Guess maybe just as a counterpoint, while I understand and Pete's sort of desire to maximize our revenue to be able to, serve as many residents as we possibly can. I would note that this is a pretty Newport Road and Bird Road, pretty popular bike corridor as well. And so speeding there has implications for safety for sort of non-motorized users that kind of use this as a longer recreational corridor. So I do think it is it has benefits beyond the neighborhood, I guess is my point as well.
May I thought about that too, if Brett, if I may.
Yeah, if you've got something quick, yeah, sure.
Sure. And it's also right. There's the Bird Road natural area, I think, or Bird Hills. But none of that is described in the resolution. Like if those are reasons why we want to do this, then we should probably state that in the resolution. And also if we're interested in traffic calming around parks, I'm all for it. But that to me is not how I understand the way that the resident initiated traffic calming program works. I mean, if we want to start prioritizing areas that are around parks and like, let's go find the park that has the most traffic going to it and on foot and on bike and the worst speeding, then like, let's do that. But that's not what we are setting out to do with the neighborhood resident initiated traffic calming.
All right, thank you. For my part, I'll be voting for it because likewise, there is also nothing in the program about dollars per resident. There's no mention of that either. I understand the the desire to spread it out over as many residents as possible, I suppose, but yeah, that's also not a metric as part of this. So yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, I had a question on that or point of clarification. If it's the neighborhood that puts the petition forward and then they meet the criteria successfully, does the city have any kind of an obligation to be responsive to those residents? Do you know what I mean? Like
right, yeah. So Raymond can I guess expand on that, but I mean they have followed the process, and then the requirement is that the more than 50% of the survey responses come back as positive or being for it. And again, this is under the outgoing set of rules. And so yes, they have initiated and followed the process and then voted positively on the process. Is there anything else you want to mention, Raymond?
No, you hit the nail on the head. The one thing I will note is we tend to do at least 2 iterations of concepts. We normally start with a starter idea and then workshop that with the neighborhood to see if it's porridge too hot, porridge too cold, porridge just right. In other words, do we need to add more, less, or change devices? And that's part of the iteration. And then after we get that feedback, we then release a second concept, roll that out, and then poll the neighborhood. And then, as Brett said, if 50% of respondents are in favor of it, then we advance it to this body and then on to city council as well.
Yeah, this one I believe was supported by 63% of respondents to the final poll. Just as a piece of information. All right, is there a motion to recommend approval of the Bird Road traffic calming petition? Moved by Megan, seconded by... all right, all those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand. All those opposed to the motion, please say no or raise your hand. All right, looks like the motion passes. All right, moving on, the next one is, we have 3 of these tonight, which is exciting. The Arella Boulevard Traffic Calming Project. So the petition process for the Arella Boulevard traffic calming between Stadium and Pauline is now complete. and is also before us for a recommend. So Raymond, if you could review this project.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Again, we received the petition for traffic calming on Arella between Stadium and Pauline. After a series of meetings with the neighborhood, the final concept proposes 2 speed humps and 1 curb extension. The concept was supported by 57% of respondents to the final poll, which means it comes to you tonight and then on to City Council for their consideration and possible approval. The estimated cost of the project is approximately $52,000, which again, we expect to be funded through the fiscal year 25 traffic calming budget. I have included on the screen an aerial of Arella Boulevard between Pauline and Stadium. You'll
Not
see.
shared.
Yeah, you're not sure. Yeah.
Was not sharing yet? Oh, sorry, I didn't actually hit the final share button. There you go. All right. Thank you for that. So the aerial here shows Arella between Pauline and Stadium. You'll see that the 2 speed humps are kind of centrally located between Martha and Pauline and Martha and Stadium, so kind of midpoints. If you're unfamiliar with the area, Martha is a stop sign. It's a stop control for Arella, actually. And then there's also a bump out or curb extension at Martha itself as well on the, what would that be, the southeast corner. The orientation is pointing north to the right. So this is the configuration, and then looking at the speed data on Arella. Again, collection dates were August of 2022, August 31st to September 9th of 2022. The 85th percentile was 28.2 miles per hour. So that is one of the qualifying criteria. You can see that one alone did not qualify this, but they had, enough petition support, enough percent violators, and other, crash history in the area, school travel, other pedestrian generators. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments? Peter.
Just by way of comparison, this project costs $35,000 less than Bird Road and will serve 5 times as many city residences. So I am in favor of it.
Any other comments or questions? All right, can I get a motion to recommend approval of the Arella Boulevard traffic calming petition moved by Peter, seconded by Wan Wu? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. The motion passes. Finally, the Henry Street traffic calming project petition process for the Henry Street traffic calming between Golden and Packard is also now complete. So Raymond, if you could take us through this project.
All right. Again, similar story. We received this petition for Henry between Golden and Packard. Followed the same process, met with the neighborhood. The final concept proposes 4 speed humps. It was supported by 84% of the respondents to the final poll, which brings it to you tonight, and then on to City Council. And the estimated cost for the project is roughly $70,000, which again, we expect to be part of the fiscal year 25 traffic calming budget. Again, I shared the screen online, which shows the aerial of the project area, Henry between Packard and Stadium. You'll see that the devices, the speed humps are located between Westminster and Golden, Westminster and Ferndale and Montclair. So that's roughly kind of the middle section of the project. And then there's another one closer to Packard, about 400 feet from the other device between Ferndale and Montclair for that 4th device kind of near the bend of Henry. And then to answer the other question about speed, the 85th percentile on Henry is 24.4 miles per hour. This was conducted in a similar time frame as what we just discussed. It was late September 2022 to early October 2022. One thing to note under that existing criteria or under the existing program, when an 85th percentile is actually below the posted speed limit, there's a negative point assessed, but you'll see that there were enough other points garnered through the petition that they qualified. And that's kind of how the existing program works. So just wanted to, highlight that and bring that to your attention. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments on this one?
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Raymond, if you could bring that last slide back up about the schools. I guess I'm just curious. I'm curious how school areas are like measured or defined. Like Patton Gill's on there, but like that's Burns Park neighborhood. Like how, I guess, how do schools get assigned to these areas?
Yeah, I'd have to look at how the team assess these. I think what we try to do is some sort of buffer around and what the catchment area is for the defined walk areas for those schools. So in particular, I think Tappan and Burns Park in particular, I think this is probably within the walk sheds of those schools.
For sure.
Patton Gill, I'm kind of surprised to see that one on there because Patton Gill wouldn't be part of the I think Burns Park is the elementary school that this would be zoned for. So that might just be a typo, a scrivener's error on the Patton Gill side, but I can follow up with staff to make that correction if that's the case.
I think it, strictly speaking, it falls within the radius, the 1.25 mile, I think, walking radius. So even though it's not assigned to that school, it's, it is correct that it's within the radius.
Okay, thanks.
And it looks like there are points, the proximity to parks is considered, right? It's, I think, the last category on there. So relative to the Bird Street project, proximity to parks is something that's considered for points. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, can I have a motion to, oh, sorry, one move, yes.
All good. Hey, so one of the comments asked about impacts to cyclists as well as snow removal. So I just wanted to know kind of the answer with respect to whether it would impact snow removal with the speed bumps, and as well as I generally I support this one just based on utilization, but just wanted to make sure that I got an answer on that particular comment about will cyclists have to kind of like go around that, in the little area of the concrete / how does snow plows work?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we move towards speed humps and speed tables or even raised intersections is because they tend to be less jarring for cyclists. So as opposed to other communities where you may have come across a speed bump, right, a very short section, that can be more jarring. Whereas a more elongated infrastructure can be less jarring if you're on a bicycle. Granted, it does have some impact. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but at the speeds at which cyclists are traveling, hopefully that impact is not too uncomfortable. In terms of snowplows, what we try to do is we update our GIS layers, and before every winter, we give those over to our public works department to let them know anytime there are new bump outs, anytime there are new speed humps. So then that way they mark those before they go out. They're pretty good about knowing where they are. Obviously, when new ones go in, I wouldn't be surprised if they forget to, raise the blade on occasion, but I think they're pretty well equipped with that. And I'm not too familiar with the mechanics of whether they actually have to raise the blade, especially on our neighborhood streets. We do not plow down to surface. So they might just be able to drive over a speed hump. But I could maybe follow up with Public Works and get some better definitive answers on that as well.
Gotcha. No, I mean, I just wanted to make sure that comment, was recognized as we hear you, and the actual bump shouldn't be so impactful that cyclists should be able to travel over those humps. So thank you for the comments and responses and support. Thanks.
All right, Peter.
Right, you pointed out proximity to parks in that worksheet. So that's That's good to know. Could we please share those 3 worksheets in the minutes then, since we've looked at them during the meeting? They were not shared before the meeting.
Yeah, they're shared online, but we're happy to put them in the minutes. So if you go to each of the project websites, all that, that's actually what I'm pulling up are the actual project websites.
Excellent, thank you.
And note that we're moving away from that particular matrix and point assignment scheme for future projects. But anyway, yeah, for the ones in the queue, that's what will be applied. All right, let's see. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the Henry Street traffic calming petition? Moved by Wan Wu, seconded by Megan. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no or raise your hand. The motion passes. All right. Next up, the trunk line transfer study. This evening, we're joined by Trevor Bryden and representatives from the consultant team that performed a cost-benefit analysis if the city were to take over ownership of Washtenaw, Huron, Jackson, and or North Main. So the team will give a presentation and then answer any questions we have. So Trevor, the floor is yours. Do you have presenting and sharing privileges, hopefully?
I believe I might. Thank you very much for that introduction, and we'll find out momentarily what those permissions are. This is a study that has been ongoing for the past year. The council directed the study, and the DDA has been a participating agency with this as well. So there's a subsection of just DDA calculations as well. But the approach was to quantify what the benefits and the costs would be to take over the trunk lines. And so Sam Schwartz, our consulting team, has performed the task, completed a report, and is here for a presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the team: David Reddig, Stacy Meekins, and Jake Visser. Jake is the one that will be leading the presentation tonight. Jake, Chris Espedes, if Jake is not able to share his screen, please allow him to do so at this time.
Yeah, I think I'm actually here as a
Okay.
panelist, so I should be able to. Let me see if I'm able to.
Perfect.
Looks good.
Does that work? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, just one moment. All right, cool. So thanks everybody. As Trevor said, I am Jake Vissers. I'm with Sam Schwartz, Senior Transportation Planner, and I will be presenting on the study that we did on a potential jurisdictional transfer. So just kicking it off, I'll give a little bit of background about the project, some of the research that we did before diving into the core part of the project, which was a benefit cost analysis. We'll discuss some results, talk about next steps, and then go into a bit of a more qualitative discussion. So just to give a little bit of a background on the project, the study focuses on 4 prominent state-owned trunk lines that I'm sure you're all familiar with: North Main Street, Jackson Avenue, Huron Street, and Washtenaw Avenue. So in total, these trunk lines are just shy of about 8 total centerline miles. And as Trevor said, the DDA is a partner in this. So 17% of those segments fall within the Downtown Development Authority District. And I think the main impetus for this study is that as state-owned trunk lines, there's definitely a prioritization towards motor vehicle traffic that ultimately contradicts with some of the city's core goals, such as BMT reduction, carbon neutrality, and Vision Zero. So one solution to that problem, and essentially the purpose of the study, was to explore what a potential jurisdictional transfer of these trunk lines might look like. So this study was really just to arm the city with as much information as they needed to make an informed decision. And the idea really is that we wanted to see what it would take for or what the I'm sorry, I lost my place there. What the implications of transferring ownership would be to the city, and how that could potentially help them align with some of their goals and make changes to potentially unlock benefits. So the purpose of the study and the components of the study initially was background research. So really trying to dig into, policy review, what sort of policies are going to be dictating the transfer, what the funding implications of the transfer would be, as well as talking to different peer cities who had already gone through the process. The next part of the study, the kind of primary core piece of it, was a benefit cost analysis. So this analysis was focusing on assessing both the benefits as well as the costs associated with hypothetical improvements that would be made possible if the trunk lines were transferred to the city. And then finally, documentation. So being able to capture all of the things that we found in the study, summarize next steps, and making sure that we just documented all of the different pieces that we learned. So the first piece in background research was really just trying to understand funding implications if the transfer were to take place. Act 51 governs most of the distribution of transportation funding in Michigan. And I think it's really important to understand that if the trunk lines were transferred to the city, they would not receive any 51 funding. However, without receiving additional Act 51 funding, the city would also lose annual maintenance funding from MDOT. In 2022, annual maintenance that was received for those trunk lines as state-owned roads was roughly $200,000, but I think with escalation, we've estimated that you could probably expect to have a reduction of about $250,000 a year, which equates to roughly 1% of total MDOT annual funding. And then that's also with an additional 2.5% of roadway mileage that the city would be responsible to maintain. So after the background research, the core part of the study was the benefit cost analysis. So we conducted that benefit cost analysis for the 4 trunk lines. However, these trunk lines were broken up into 6 separate segments that all had continuous cross sections. So you can see North Main Street, that was assessed as an entire segment. Huron Street was divided into 2 contiguous segments, and Washtenaw Avenue was divided into 2 contiguous segments as well. And ultimately, like I said, the intention of the benefit cost analysis was to quantify both the benefits as well as the costs for hypothetical improvements that would be unlocked if the trunk lines were transferred to the city. It's worth noting as well that the analysis followed the US DOT benefit cost analysis methodology, which is really, it's a US DOT methodology that's used to assess whether projects are worth funding by assessing benefits, translating them into dollar values, assessing costs, and then using those 2 values to calculate a benefit cost ratio. Pretty standard equation. It's just benefits divided by costs. If a benefit cost ratio is greater than 1, that means that the benefits outweigh the costs. If a benefit cost ratio is less than 1, that means that the costs outweigh the benefits. So this is kind of a high-level overview of the methodology that we use to calculate the benefit cost ratios. So starting at the left, we assess the existing trunk line conditions, what's there right now. Next, we developed those hypothetical concepts we were talking about, and these were largely based off existing planning exercises. And really, they were meant to capture how the roadways could look under city control. So very much hypothetical. And this step was necessary because you can't really quantify benefits unless there is measurable and concrete changes to the roadway. So in order to be able to calculate what those benefits might be, we needed specific infrastructure improvements to actually base those benefit values off of. So once the concepts were developed, we assess cost, assess quantitative benefits, use that to calculate the benefit cost ratio for each of the segments. And then in parallel, also assessed and discussed some of the qualitative benefits. So things that are tougher to quantify, such as improved quality of life, alignment with city goals, things like that. So I'm going to walk through an example benefit cost analysis, and this is for North Main Street. This is just one of the 6 segments that we did a BCA for, but it works as a good example. It's self-contained, and it's got a pretty wide mix of different improvements to demonstrate what the process is like. So as outlined in the flow chart, the first step was just assessing existing conditions for North Main Street. That's 4 lanes of vehicle traffic, continuous sidewalk on the east side. And I know there's not a sidewalk there on the west side. There is for some of Main Street, but it's incomplete coverage. So then the next step was developing that hypothetical trunk line concept. So for North Main Street, this meant reconfiguring 4 lanes to 2 vehicle lanes, turning lanes, as well as protected bike lanes, reducing the speed limit, adding roundabouts, along with a suite of other different pedestrian safety improvements. Hypothetical concepts for other segments were similar in a lot of the different safety improvements. I think the biggest is that segments like Huron and Washtenaw that had transit service on them also included dedicated bus lanes rather than protected bike lanes. So once we had the hypothetical concepts, each different improvement within the concepts were assessed for 10 potential quantifiable benefits, ranging from safety, emission reductions, street maintenance savings, property value increase. And I think it's worth noting too that the improvements could yield benefits from multiple categories. So, for example, a protected bike lane on Main Street that would have a safety benefit for added safety and comfort for cyclists, but could also see an emission reductions benefit from reducing estimated vehicle miles traveled, as well as a health benefit from increased cycling mode share. Another thing that's really important to understand about the benefits within a benefit cost analysis is that the benefits are quantified in dollars. The US DOT has dollar values to quantify the benefits, but they don't necessarily relate to direct monetary benefit to the city. So really the benefits can be thought of as public benefits with monetized values trying to capture things such as safer streets, better air quality, better noise pollution, things like that. So the US DOT takes time to try and assign values to things that we see as public benefits, although they don't necessarily mean that the city is going to see those dollar values. However, there are benefits like safety, where you have a broad public benefit where improved public safety, improved safe streets are good things. But if a roadway also sees improvements that lead to a reduction in crashes, then you could also expect to see a reduced strain on things like local emergency services. So while there is that public benefit, there's also the potential for indirect monetary benefit or savings to the city. So this slide is really just meant to illustrate the types of improvements and the scales of each benefit category. The biggest thing to note here is just that the safety benefit is the highest for North Main Street. This is generally true of most benefit cost analysis, definitely for the segments that we analyzed. And I think for North Main Street, this is especially true because we have very, very high benefit inducing safety improvements such as lane reconfigurations, protected bike lanes, roundabouts. But I think generally that the US DOT does put a high benefit value on projects that demonstrate that they can reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities. So after the benefits, the other key piece of a benefit cost analysis is costs. This is varying a little bit segment to segment, but the distribution is more or less the same. This is for North Main Street. You can see that capital costs make up 81% of the total estimated costs. That's generally going to be the dominant category. Second to that is capital maintenance, which we defined as an every 7-year single course overlay. And then the smallest share, that 2%, is the operations and maintenance costs. And this represents that MDOT distribution of annual maintenance funding, that $200,000 that we outlined in the beginning of the presentation. And another thing with costs that's worth kind of hammering home here is that the analysis is assumed that every cost is borne by the city. So this is every single cost that could be involved in this project is baked into the cost side of the benefit cost analysis. So once all the costs and benefits over the lifetime of the project are calculated, they need to be brought down to a base year so we can make an apples to apples comparison between the costs and the benefits. And this bringing down to a base year per US DOT guidance is a 7% annual discount down to $2021. So you can see that benefits and costs end up being brought down fairly significantly. However, the benefits do end up getting brought down more than costs. And that's generally the case because costs, as we saw in the last slide, are generally capital costs. So that comes at the beginning of the project, whereas benefits are yielded after the project is completed and into the future. So some of the benefits may be realized 20 years down the line, whereas most of the costs are coming when the project's actually being discounting tends to affect the benefits a little bit more. So once everything's discounted, you are able to calculate the benefit cost ratio. As I had mentioned earlier, greater than 1 means benefit outweighs cost. Less than 1 means that the cost outweighs the benefits. So a lower benefit cost ratio could mean either higher cost and or lower benefits, and then a higher benefit cost ratio in reverse would mean either lower costs and or high benefits. So for each segment, we calculated a low cost and a high cost estimate. And you can kind of see just on North Main Street here how that variation in costs can impact the benefit cost ratio. So the high cost estimate, a little bit over 25 million, and you have a benefit cost ratio of 0.78. But looking at the low cost estimate, just a little bit over 20 million, and that gets a little bit closer to 1. So that's a 0.98. And this is true with all the segments. So taking a step back, these are the 6 trunk line segments that we ran the benefit cost analysis for. We just walked through Main Street, but you can see that with the other trunk line segments, there's some pretty notable variation. So with Main, that's actually the one that sits closest to 1. I think the primary reason for that is that there were quite a bit of benefits realized with the Main Street hypothetical concept. However, the costs were significant because the segment required a pretty expensive road reconstruction to bring it up to a state of good repair. Jackson, on the other hand, that's nearly at 0, and the reason for that is because the hypothetical concept included little to no improvements. I think there were recent projects done on Jackson, and the feeling was that that was sufficient, and we didn't need to add any more improvements into our concepts. On the other end of the spectrum, though, Huron Street saw the highest benefit cost ratios. A couple of reasons for that. I think the biggest piece here is just that it's a relatively short, and a lot of the improvements, namely the dedicated bus lanes on there, tended to be lower cost and have a benefit to a lot of different residents. So dedicated bus lanes on Huron, it'll deliver speed, it'll deliver reliability to riders across several different bus routes, while you're really only touching 1 street there. So it's a small piece of infrastructure with a high impact. So again, as Trevor mentioned, the DDA is a partner through this. How does this impact the DDA? Well, 17% of the total segments fall within the district boundary. If you kind of use that 17% ratio or the individual percent segment center lines in the DDA to estimate how many benefits actually fall within the DDA, we're projecting, or we're estimating that $25 million of benefits, as well as $15 to $19 million of costs fall within the district boundary. And you can see here the majority